We have been asked a question about why is it that so many of us feel guilt when we're purchasing clothes? And could we have a discussion about this? And it was something I thought that Jill, especially with your over shopping experience and your shop, you with that clothes shopping and shop your wardrobe and all those things, and also you've done a lot of research into the feelings behind shopping and stuff. So I thought you'd probably have some good thoughts on this as well.
Absolutely, and guilt is one of the emotions that you can feel connected to shopping, but there is really the full spectrum of emotions. And for me, my own over shopping journey, which a lot of people are familiar with, which is 10 or so years old now since I became conscious of it, my own over shopping was really connected to more, I guess what you'd call feelings on the positive side of the spectrum. Over shopping when I felt a need to celebrate, or something had gone really well and I was already feeling, up. Yes. And then shopping would be a reward for me. For other people, shopping is a little bit more towards the middle of the spectrum, or it can go down to the other end of the, I guess, less positive range of emotions, which is I'm feeling down, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling bored, I'm feeling frustrated. And so then the shopping, it becomes this endless cycle. I'm already feeling some range of emotion, then the shopping doesn't alleviate or doesn't provide a sustained high, if that's what you're going for, and then you circle back around, except the emotion that you're feeling is amplified, whatever it was. And that's why you can get this slightly sort of roller coaster experience. But guilt is a particular one. When I shop and then I feel bad, I feel guilty, and this can lead to experiences like I hide my purchases, or if
this old thing,
exactly, a partner says, hey, that looks like something new, you can actually end up being less than truthful. Sometimes it's called lying, where you say, no, it's not new, because you want to deflect attention from the fact that you've purchased something. So shopping is not just shopping, it can have all these emotions attached to it.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting, and I think it's very common. I think one of those most common ones is the hiding of purchases. And so it's you bring things home, the bag gets stuffed into the back of the wardrobe, then it stays there for a while sometimes, and then by the time it comes out, it's like, no, it's not you, because I didn't just buy it because it's been stuffed in the wardrobe for a couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
But it's this, and I think there's so many layers about why when we purchase, like, are we not allowed to spend money on ourselves? Are we not valuable enough to spend money on our clothes? Now, I think there's a lot in here, because I certainly know there's a lot to do with our personal value, how we see ourselves, and our ability to spend money on ourselves, because I think this is also something that often relates to weight. That a lot of women who are not the size 10 to 1, whatever is the size that you want to be, they'll often say, well, I don't want to spend money on myself until I get to that weight, as if I'm not a valuable enough person to spend any money on. And I think that all this stuff probably ties together in some way, but I also think there's obviously a lot of messaging that we may have had over the years that says spending money on clothes is somehow shallow, and clothing is shallow. Style is skin deep, and we know it's not. And that it's a waste of money to spend money on clothes. And maybe too, I think a lot of the time, that there's something about we have wasted money on clothes because we've made poor purchasing decisions.
Yes, so it can actually be true that we have wasted money on it, and then we can start to feel bad about that, and that's when your confidence can start to be eroded. You start to second guess yourself, and that's also where you don't want to spend any significant money. You don't want to make an investment purchase, because what if it's wrong on some level? Even if you have some form of criteria, make it an 8, or your colours or any of those kinds of things, you can still find yourself feeling uncertain about it. And if you are going to make what for you is an investment purchase, it can really erode your confidence.
So I think there's that, a lot of that. I've made poor purchasing decisions before, so I don't want to tell anybody about this one, because it might be a bad one. And I don't want to feel like I don't know what I'm doing or I'm making bad decisions. So this could be partly why some people hide their purchases, and they or feel guilty about their purchases. And I think too that, like, we were having a conversation the other day about special occasions. Like, often why do we want to go and buy something new for a special occasion? Particularly, these are often our least worn clothes. And they're often
sometimes one occasion. That's it.
Once, it's once, and often they're very expensive clothes. Rather than going, well, so you go cost per wear, it's not actually good value. But here we are going, but is it because for some reason or other we've allowed, a special occasion gives us permission to go shopping?
Yes.
We're all allowed to go shopping for that special occasion, that we feel guilty though when it's just, I need a new pair of pants to wear to work every day.
Yeah.
Even though that is actually a much better use of your money.
Much more versatile item.
Yeah.
I think there can also be things around feeling that it's a selfish pursuit. I'm spending too much time, money, resources, effort thinking on myself,
Yes.
and that can make us feel very selfish. Interesting statistics that I found in my research in my year without clothes shopping was that 41% of women hide purchases from their partners. I personally think in the field of over shoppers, I think that's low. That was just a general statistic, but for those of us who have over shopped, I think 41% is actually quite a low number. But this whole idea that we can't not exactly show off, but we can't be honest about this aspect of our style, and I think that that's why it's important to have a conversation about it. Anytime there's something we feel we can't be honest, there can be feelings of shame that are
Yes.
attached with that, and I think that's never going to be something that moves us forward as women when we have shame attached to something. And for me, the only way to start to soften that shame is to shed some light on it. It's a very gentle and generous light. You really want to be kind to yourself when you start exploring these things, because we use these words guilt and shame, but when you are feeling them, you can feel very, very vulnerable when you're really getting in touch with those emotions.
Really quite bad. And it's interesting because I've also had husbands of my clients say, you have to take her out shopping and you're going to spend this money, because every time she's supposed to go out shopping for herself, she buys something for the kids. She never buys anything for herself.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that there's a lot that often comes with motherhood, where it's not about you anymore. You have to sublimate your own need to sleep for the sake of your baby's survival. You need to sublimate your own need to, go to the bathroom alone for your children. There's all these things that happen when you have kids that suddenly you become just a non-person in a way, to keep this other being alive and happy and all those things. And so suddenly, well, why are you the valuable person who gets the money to spend on themselves? No, it's got to go on the kids come first. Oh, the kids' activities and the kids' clothes, because the kids are growing out of their clothes, they get new clothes. I'm not growing anymore.
Yeah.
So, so I think there's an awful lot of guilt and some of those other things are wrapped up here as well. It's really kind of an interesting, and we have no answer to this.
Yeah, it's a very personal journey. And I think then the other thing too is then what messages you are sending to your children. I remember being part of a piece on over shopping during my year, and a couple of years later I did quite a lot of media, and there was one story, and they did an opening collage where they went a bit of sort of vox pop, went around asking people, and there was a woman and she was out shopping with a daughter, quite young, I would say primary school age, so maybe let's say 10ish, that kind of age. And the woman was boasting, she was very proud of the fact that she had turned her daughter into a shopaholic. And I cried when I saw that. Having been through that experience, I thought, oh, I actually thought that was not a positive thing to pass on to a child. That was my personal judgment, and that is a judgment of mine, personal opinion there. On the more positive side of the spectrum, because I am an op shopper, it's my favourite form of shopping, and here in Australia we have wonderful op shops. I often see mothers with children, and it's really interesting, having a little bit of an eavesdrop on the messages that they're giving about consumption and what you can buy, and that kind of shopping, and how normal that kind of shopping is for some families, which I think is extremely positive. This whole idea, you don't always need to be buying something new, you don't even need to be buying something.
No. So, I think that there's so many things that are wrapped up in shopping.
Yeah.
And I think there's probably a lot of messages. There's some of those external messages that style is shallow, and therefore spending money on your style when you've already got good clothes that haven't worn out. Especially, I grew up with kind of, not Depression era parents, Second World War era parents, where it was scrimp and save and make and mend. Do not buy. That was like buying was such a luxury. And so therefore, spending money on yourself is this luxury, and can you afford it, and all those kind of other messages have come through. And so I can imagine that other people that have similar sorts of messages from their childhood that they might have had to deal with. So there's those sort of what's my family messaging about, and where style is valued in the family or not. That would be another thing to go. where's it being placed, and is getting dressed and thinking about your style something that's not had any value placed on it, or it might have had lots of value placed on it and you feel no guilt and it's all wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't notice men having the same issue though with guilt, and that's something I find very interesting. My husband has no problem going out and spending money, and he likes me to come too, and it's like, let's go and find some things, and isn't this fun?
But I think men too.
And he's more than happy at the time if we're shopping for me to find stuff too. So if I feel any guilt, that's my own thing. It's not him putting it on me. That's right. And the husbands I've talked to, going, take my wife shopping.
Well,
it's not about him saying you can't shop.
Before I started my year without clothes shopping, and I was doing a bit of haul shopping, my husband would say, do a bit of a fashion parade. Very supportive of that, and I get that as well. I think the other interesting thing, just expanding the conversation about shopping, is if there's a disconnect between the sizing of an item of clothing, men are more likely to think it's the clothes' fault, not theirs. And women are often, there's something wrong with me, I'm too large, or my proportions are wrong, or I mustn't be that size anymore. And so I think men's relationship to shopping in general is quite different to women's.
So we'd love to know your thoughts on where the guilt and the shame comes from, because I think this is a fascinating conversation that we can all have.